Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we've got a double breakdown for the One Piece card game. There were 3 large events that happened around the world, and we've currently got deck lists for 2 of them, and as soon as I get the deck list for the 3rd one, they'll be on the website as well. But currently, we've got the Top Cut events, October online regionals, as well as the TAC Games online regionals. So if you guys want any of the deck lists, you can make sure to check them out in my website, Eggman Events, which again, once we get the Raid and Trade one later this week, I will be updating that as well. We have all of the English events for the OP08 meta as well, as we kind of close into this 8.5 meta, as the community has been calling it, with the release of the new star decks and everything to kind of spice up the meta a little bit. But honestly, there's some really good diversity, especially this week compared to others, that I'm really excited to go over, and I'm just looking forward to jumping into it. So real quick though, before we start, one, make sure you hit that like and subscribe. It does help the channel a lot. It means you guys want some more One Piece content. And then also make sure to check out the website for the deck list. And third, I was able to do the live stream for this event with Browne from Stage Zero. I really do appreciate that, and I do have a little bit more knowledge on some of the top cut deck lists, just since I saw a good amount of them played during the tournament as well. But if you guys want to watch that, that's linked in the description or also on the page here. Free to watch, and I hope you guys enjoy that too. But jumping on into our double breakdown for the top cut event, we did have 1,024 players. We did cap out 10 rounds of Swiss best of 1 in this top 32 there. And then also for the October TAC Games one, we did have 358 players, 9 rounds of Swiss best of 1, and with a top 16 just based on attendance for that one. So for the top cut one specifically, of the top 32, we did see 10 of the Star Deck 13 Luffys, 6 Rob Lucci, with one of them winning the event, 6 Bonney, 4 of the purple Luffy, 3 of the blue Nami, 2 of the green and yellow Yamato, and 1 of the Zoro. So it is clear. I know you guys see this pie chart and you're like, oh, easy, 50% of the Star Deck of 13 Luffy and the Rob Lucci, which I think that is, we all have opinions on Gecko Mori as an 8-drop, and in this meta right now, it's obviously very strong and then continue to be strong in this meta and for this tournament in general, but this is a smaller percentage than we've actually seen previously. You will notice that there's no Star Deck 14 Luffy in the top for this event, which I think is really significant, especially since this was a top 32 breakdown and not a top 16. So had a little bit more chance for that, and still none of that, which has been interesting, especially since on the TAC side, it won their entire event, right? So wild to see the deck just win an entire event and then did not win. I didn't even top for us here in North America. And then as I wait for the Raid and Trade ones, I don't know their exact breakdown right now, but I do know that Star Deck 14 Luffy also won their event too. So really interesting kind of divide between the two. And then for the TAC Games in general, we did have 4 Luccis, 4 of the Star Deck 13 Luffy. So again, 50% between these two across both top cuts is pretty indicative that they're pretty strong right now. 2 Nami, and then singletons of, again, Star Deck 14 Luffy, which ended up winning. Yamato as well for this event. Trafalgar Law, Enel, Bonney, as well as Reiju. So a little bit more diversity on the left half of that pie chart, and then the same, almost the same on the right side. So I don't have the total leader breakdown for the TAC event, but I do have a pretty close one for the one for top cut. So we do see a 262 Rob Lucci, 191 of the 13 Luffy, 101 Bonnies, 67 Namis, 58 of the Star Deck 14 Luffy. So they were present, but they just didn't end up topping. We had 54 copies of the purple Luffy, which again, they had like the same ratio of players essentially as Star Deck 14 Luffy, but they were able to get 4 copies into the top 32. And then we also had 44 Dofis, 42 Zoros, 31 Reijus, 20 Puddings, 19 Katakuris, 17 Enel, 15 Calgaris, 12 Yamatos, which 2 of them ended up getting into the top 32, 11 Marcos, and then 80 miscellaneous from there. So still a good amount of divide. Most of the time when I jump into this meta, I say that I think that the breakdown is like the top cut is usually 75% of Star Deck 13 Luffy, Lucci, Bonney, Nami, and Star Deck 14 Luffy, which this one essentially does cover that. I think purple Luffy is in the top 6, if not maybe bumped up to top 5 more consistently. And then on this side, we see approximately the same thing. Bonney only getting 1 finish, but a 75% of the 5 leaders I mentioned. And then no purple Luffy topping, which was interesting to see that between the two. So I think what the big thing is I want to mention is that there is some diversity that still exists. You'll see some differences between some of the leaders and some of the deck lists as well, and I think that's still really interesting, even if there isn't as much diversity of other metas that we've seen in this card game. So anyways, I'm going to jump into my individual breakdowns of the deck list. We're going to jump between the TAC and the top cut events as we go down through it. I'm going to start off with the first place list for the top cut event that we had. So this is the first place list here for us. This is ENENE's version of the build, and it's Lucci, right? It's what we've been seeing a lot of the time. Something that I did notice for this one and has been paying dividends is the re-inclusion of Brook in a lot of Lucci lists. This was a card that was really good at the end of OP07. This got around a lot of Sabos. I think it was a good way to try to get around some protection effects, which paid off pretty well as well. The fact that you can attack with your Rob Lucci and then play this Brook means that whatever 5 cost they played, even if it was Sabo, even if they played a 4 cost Borsalino, this Brook would be able to get rid of it, which is very powerful. And then having a 6k leader is great too. I think this also helps you in the Star Deck 14 Luffy matchup, which you didn't need as much help with, but that is kind of impactful. And it's a great add for Nami, since it does put more cards into their deck, even though that sometimes doesn't mean as much as it looks like. So I do like the re-inclusion there. And then Kaido's been a pretty popular pick as well. I've been seeing more people go to like 1 or 2 copies of this card too. It's a new card from OP08, being able to put a card into your opponent's trash as well, so it does get around KO effects. If you're playing against a deck that really cares about their cards in hand, this Kaido's really great. And if you have time to play it, I do think it's really great against Black Yo Luffy specifically, right? It gets rid of a Gecko Moria, whether they had Sabo that played that turn or not, and getting a card out of Luffy's hand is the same as if this attacked the turn it did, right? Every time that you can take 1 card out of your opponent's hand for Luffy, it's really good, since it's a they usually just use every card's a value card in their deck. So 1 less of that I think is a really good trade and helps you play against that matchup, which based on our own results has been pretty tough for Rob Lucci to overcome in general. So other than that, I think it's like the standard package we've been seeing most of the time. We do have like the Cypher Pull package. Who's been a good ad. Spandine has been at 2 to 3 copies from most decks, and then Helmeppo over Suru has been a small trend I've been seeing as well. So this is the build here, and congratulations to ENENE for their finish there. Next up for the TAC event, we do have first place. So this is Zihao Wang's version of the deck here. This is interesting that they're running the Isho and Jack and the Moria. So really top end heavy list of this. Jack obviously has been a really good card for this deck, being able to get a 11 cost very easily, or 12 cost with their leader effect. Just being able to keep this leader at a 6k body as much as possible does help against a lot of builds. You just get a lot of advantage throughout the match, which is great. Other than that, we just kind of see I'd say more standard copies of cards. I've been seeing some people play the Laboon as like a worse copy of the Kuzan, making it so you could use some cost reduction, and you're able to use it immediately, right? So that there are some situations where you'd rather have Laboon than Kuzan. But Brook's been a little bit more common, Borsalino's been a little bit more common in the builds as of late that I've seen. So being able to run this card is just a blocker that's a little bit hard to get rid of. Obviously, if they're playing Brook in the Rob Lucci, they can get rid of this pretty easy, but another blocker that ends up being a 6k as well, when you're a 6k leader, can be helpful. But then just generally the standard stuff we see from there, right? We play a couple copies of the 5 cost Sanji, we play out the Nico Robin, and that's about it. And you guys would probably, if this card was a straw hat, we'd 100% play it, but it's not. So unfortunately, Sanji's the card that we have to use for it. But being able to get rid of a 5 cost can be really strong as well. But this is the list here. Congratulations to Zihao for their win with Star Deck 14 Luffy. And then moving on, we've got Yamato, and I prefaced this for the Paris breakdown that we had last week. Yamato was not a list that I thought was going to do well in this format. Based on my own research for the Japanese format, it wasn't doing very good, but that was obviously a different format with Red Purple Law being around, and to see it not only do very well at a championship the week before, but being able to win top both these events, including second place with Long's version of it. So I actually have all 3 copies of the list brought up. So we do have Long's version as well as BUTTZ version from the North American event, and then we also have this version here, which is Joshua's for the Oceania event. So you can see that there's obviously some good build diversity for these cards. The main cards that are, I think, added for this one, this Tonoyasu, I don't think this is run for the Oceania event, but for the two North Americans, this is a pretty strong card. Being able to say, give you, trash this card, give it to your leader, or one characters with Wano Country plus 3k power is really great in the sense that you're able to use this to bump up your leader, and then you can use your leader effect afterwards to give 2 Dawn to something else that exists. So something that I've noticed with this deck is that you can really pump out some bigger numbers, and like then your opponent's used to counting. If your opponent has 10 Dawn, right, the biggest your Yamato attack can be 15, right? But with copies of Tonoyasu, it becomes 16. We also have cards such as the Demonic Ore 9 Sword Style Oster Demon 9 Flash, which I'll only say once in this video, but saying up to one of your leaders or characters gets plus 3k, so it's the same kind of idea. Then you can rest one of your characters with a cost of 3 or more. If you do, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So being able to use this to get rid of blockers for like Sabo, for Rebecca, that can be really impactful for being able to get that last attack in. Obviously we're playing Hody in the deck as well to be able to do that kind of same thing. So obviously a little bit more aggressive and less defensive since you have to take the card from your life, but there's some times where you need those cards in your life if your opponent's kind of respecting your board a little bit much. So this is specifically Long's version. If we jump over to BUTTZ version real quick, they've got a little bit more of the rush as well. They have the Enel, and interesting to see that I don't think any of these decks are playing the 5-cost rush ace, which generically was a pretty good staple for Yamato. The fact that you could play it for 5 and then it becomes a 9k attack for free because you're able to attach the 2 Dawn is generally pretty good for the deck. There's also like some like mini packages of like if you want to play like more of the Wano stuff, since you have like the Momo, which is able to put cards back into your life. We also have like the Momo 1-drop as well as the Otama for some more cycle and card draw, which is interesting. This is specifically from Joshua's build. And then we also have like the new inclusion of like the Nami. So this is an OP08 card as well. You can play trash a card with trigger in your hand, which is like half the cards in your deck at this point. KO of 5 or less, and then if you have 3 or less cards in your hand, you get to draw 1, so you even get some card cycle at times. So I think that's really impactful for the deck too, is like a better version of Gadatsu, because Gadatsu felt really weird because if you attacked with your leader once and it connected, you put them down to 3 life, and then you couldn't get rid of their 4 cost or their 5 cost, which hurt the removal aspects of that card. So you definitely would go 1 for 1 with this Nami, and the trigger effect is still very good. So other than that, I think again Joshua's version here goes more into the Wano package. So we have like the Hiyori, which is able to play a 5 cost, which includes the Momo as well, or the Kigo Nojo, and just get that extra cycle. And then lastly, this one's a little bit, I think, more I think like both BUTTZ and Long's version are pretty similar compared to the two. They're more just like straight aggressive, running more cards of just the trigger to play out of life. So the Nekomamushi as well as the Ino Arashi, their effects aren't super relevant. The only really relevant thing is the trigger, and then and getting that extra advantage. So last thing is that they are slash, so you can play Mihawk to play these out. And I think the biggest thing that it's been shown is that this is more Wano centric. A lot of other builds I think were more like the Sky Island version. They would play out the Shuras as well as the Holy Ohm combo, which was really good for putting up more bodies on the board, but looks like more of the trend has been the Wano package, which is really interesting. So decks, I probably talked a little bit too much on these, but it's really exciting. And this was a deck that I personally, when asked literally at the beginning of this format, I didn't think Yamato was able to do well in this format in general, and I've been happily surprised that it's been able to top pretty consistently these last couple weeks, and I'm interested to see how it does not only for this last week of OP08 vanilla that we have, but also as we get the star decks in the next month too. So these are the Yamato's list, and congratulations to Long, Joshua, and BUTTZ for their X1 finishes this weekend. All right, jumping into another kind of blast from the past, another dual color leader I wasn't sure was too viable. It is the Trafalgar Law. So this is Dylan's version of the list. I've seen some people tell me that they've got a really good build of like the animal package, something that we'll see later in the Zoro deck for this one. But this is just pretty standard, right? This is what I would expect to see as soon as the expansion booster came out at the beginning of like summer this year, like back in May, because we have this Cavendish, right? This is a card that works with Law, being able to play it out, get 2 Dawn left, and then you can use the 2 Dawn to use your leader effect or play more bodies kind of thing. And like I know a lot of people are experimenting with the deck again, but with Sakazuki still around, as well as the like Rob Lucci in OP07, the removal for 1 cost and 2 cost bodies is pretty high in a lot of decks right now. Something that wasn't true when this deck was really good in OP02, 1, 3, 4. You know, once we got to 5, this deck really fell off. And so to still see it top, I think is really cool. I think there's a little bit of just not respecting sometimes like how much value this deck can really get with all the cycling you get, being able to use Trafalgar Law. The Cavendish has still been a very good card. Monkey.D.Luffy can still swing for game a lot of the time, especially if you already have a full board and you can play him for less than 5 Dawn, so you can put more Dawn underneath him and just kind of the rest for it. So I really don't have much insights for this build in general. It is really cool to see Law top this event and go X1 in a 300 plus player event, and I'd be interested to see if it does anything. I don't think it really gets much or if any support for the star decks that come out, and I think it's going to get rushed down more often from that, but it'd be cool if it topped again. I'd be interested to see some new builds with it and to see if it still does anything. So this is Dylan's version of the build, and congratulations for their X1 finish with the Trafalgar Law. And then next up we've got Purple Luffy. So again, this is a deck that only finished for the North American event, but did not finish in the TAC event there, but being able to be pretty relevant. I think at the tail end of this meta, more and more people are jumping onto it, and I think it's kind of a combination of the deck just being good, but also the fact that Purple Luffy is going to get a whole new package, and I think way more consistent with the introduction of its own starter deck again at the end of the month. So I've said this a couple times before, and I'll continue to say it, that it's very interesting how good this deck has been as just a generic purple deck. It being a purple straw hat doesn't really do anything for us. The fact that most of these cards are just cards that have been released for purple up till now, right? There's no real cohesive idea behind it besides probably getting rid of a 4 cost is a really good card, or Magellan being able to prevent my opponent from ramping as much is a good idea, right? Like that's generically how this deck works. And it's like, if I could do that a turn earlier, how much does that impact the game, right? So I honestly still think that this kind of package is still great, but the Straw Hat package that we're getting in the new star deck is really good. I do like the inclusion of Linlin. I think this has been a really good card for the deck. It's like an alternative to Kaido, and kind of the issue with Kaido in general is that this was just the best card and there was nothing like equal value to it, and the issue with that is that you have to go down -5 to use this effect, right? Like if you had a generic card that would do something like what we've found in with Linlin, more people would play it, but the purple just did not have that card pool to really support it. They're either specific to a different type or they just weren't good generically, and so being able to have like a second boss monster in this deck was really needed, because again, you get all the way to 10 Dawn and it's like, did you find Kaido? No. Cool, all right, well then you're just playing out your 5 drops kind of thing. So I do respect the one of Luffy. I do really like just putting the swag copy of this. It does come up in some situations, and moving forward, purple Straw Hat is very searchable, so it's a good boss monster in those decks too. Sanji's been a great ad, and again will continue to be a good ad when we are looking for purple Straw Hat specifically. And then the rest of the build, we see Streepshorn. This is going to be replaced with Usohachi like immediately, but still a good idea when you're trying to get rid of Sabo and Rebecca blockers, and then just again like the generic, we got a bunch of 4/6 vanillas, a bunch of good 2Ks, and just hopefully being able to put up the aggression for it. So this is the build here from Zent. Congratulations for their finish with Purple Luffy, and I'm going to be interested to see how this transitions into the star deck meta. Next up, we've got the yellow and black Luffy. This is Smoil's version of the build here, and I don't want to like brush over this. I do think like, and I'll say it for both this, and I'll say it for Nami in a second. I think this is a deck that has been proven is very strong in this meta, and it's very strong with exactly what the card pools is, and it's not going to really change anytime soon without like Bandai making any interaction changes. But I do think it's a deck that promotes having a good idea of how the deck's played, knowing where your value is. I do respect like the end game becomes pretty linear, but getting to the end game and how much value you have when you get there does make a difference, and I do think that that's there. That being said, most black yellow Luffy lists are 45 cards the same. It's been pretty cemented on what the tech cards are, right? Most builds aren't playing Ace. We've been seeing a little bit of an uptick with the 5-cost Sabo as a way to go down to 1 less life and get some good trades, specifically against decks like Bonney, which are playing out a bunch of 5 costs right now. So being able to play out this body and get rid of like a not Hawkins, but a Cavendish is very strong. And then we do have the rest. I haven't been seeing as much 10-drop Kuzan, but I do know it exists for some of these builds. Ice Age has been pretty good, and then we do have a good amount of searchers and stuff. So I think this deck is going to be fantastic. You guys probably have your own opinions on it, but you still have to be pretty dang good to play it in an X1 record, and congratulations to Smoil for their finish with it this time. And then next up, we've got Nami. So this is Unlikely Hero, also known as Adam, with their finish for it. Adam was over a couple weeks ago for one of our Wednesday night One Piece, and he's definitely one of the best Nami players, if not the best Nami player I know. There's a close knit like top 3 in my mind, and he's definitely in there. And he's been playing a lot of Nami. It shows. He was able to get a finish on this week and the previous week with Nami too. So definitely knowing what he's doing for it. We do have like the one tech ad of the 3000 worlds, which I think could come up every once in a while. Being able to get rid of a body and get that momentum back is I think not too bad for the deck. It's also East Blue type, which shows up for Opus. So sometimes it's just like another search item for it, right? Since we are only playing 23 copies of it, but only 20 copies of it, because you don't get to oh, you can find itself. I didn't know this. This is me reading cards for the first time. Opus can find itself. I didn't know that from before now, I guess. So regardless of that, though, I do think that this is also a little bit more aggressive with the Zeph playing 2 copies of this. And this is I think some decks are being more patient against Nami, realizing that Nami's really good if you only apply a medium amount of pressure, where they can get out of it and use their Dawn as best as they can without getting as much damage. So there are a lot of times where they just won't attack you, or they'll leave you, they'll wait to build their board. So having a proactive card like Zeph, where they have to answer it, where it gets you some cards into your trash, and being able to reset your Kayas is, I think, a strong pick for this one. And also a really good matchup breaker, or mirror breaker for it too. So you will see we have no copies of Hanger, which I think most decks are playing 1 or 2 copies of it, but I'm not too surprised. If we're playing Zeph, I think it's the same-ish as Hanger too. So, but this is the build here for Adam. I know he's got probably a little bit more insight on it from what I can say, but Nami's still in a really good spot, and I really don't expect that to change until maybe Dofi meta. If Dofi becomes, I know that he's worried about Dofi being very present with the new Star decks coming out, which is a pretty bad matchup for Nami in a lot of ways. And if that's true, this might be a little bit less relevant, which judging by my comment section for the Paris championship, most people would be okay with, but we'll see what that's like when we get there. But again, congratulations to Adam for their finish with Nami. And then lastly, before we jump into our last one-ofs, we've got Bonney here. So I've decided to choose Vermet's version of the build. This is pretty similar to builds that I've been running for the deck as well. I've been prioritizing just how much value that our 8-drop Rosinante can get right now as well. When this card came out on OP05, it was pretty bad in the sense that our green 5-drop specific card pool was pretty shallow. A lot of the cards didn't really synergize with each other. They didn't really have just good generic value. And I think with the change in OP08, with the introduction of Carrot as another good 5-drop, especially against decks like Dofi in the next little half format, we have enough targets that we can see our 5-drops. We get immediate value from them, and we can continue getting that value. So I do think that's a good ad for this Rosie. Being able to play 3 copies of this, and then taking out a copy of Zoro, which I think if I was to play Zoro in a deck, I'd play it at no more than 1 right now. Lucci is so present, they can get rid of it. I do recognize that against like a.UnlikelyHero at times, against Nami, against some other decks, that this can just be our win condition. But at the same time, I've ended so many games where I have like 2 copies of it in my hand. I never feel safe or bold enough to play it, and I just could have used it for better things. So I think Rosie's my more preferred secret rare right now of the 2, and it's been getting a lot more value. So other than that, top end, Roos's Kid still just wins some matchups. We got Dofi at 3 copies, Hody to end games, and just our generic Supernova package. So some are still on like the Dofi Don Quixote Pirates package. You can kind of switch between the 2. You can go hard lean to one, hard lean to the other, or do like the 50-50 split. But I do appreciate the kind of build diversity and kind of changes that Bonnie's been doing. And I think Bonnie's still just going to be generically our green deck going into, again, this half format. And if Dofi's really present, this carrot's going to be very, very strong at answering a lot of their wide boards too. So this is the build here. Congratulations to Vermet for their finish there. And then to finish it off, we've got 3 1-of decks. So these are decks that had 1 finish across our both events. So we have Enel here. So this is Jake Reynolds' version of it. This is like Enel's kind of dropped off. I think I can say that safely, right? Based off how we've been seeing it in OP07 compared to how we're seeing in OP08. Enel's gone very few tops in comparison, and it's interesting to wonder why, right? We did get some new cards, right? Nami's been a really great removal card for us. So if you're looking at this one too, we have kind of like the max amount of removal at the medium end of having 4 copies of BUTTZ, 4 copies of Luffy, as well as 4 copies of Nami. So being able to get rid of a bunch of 4s and 5 costs is really, really good. We also have the new addition of the Bonney from this set as well. This has a Dawn ×1 effect your turn when your opponent a card is from your is removed from your opponent's life card. Draw 2 cards and you get to trash 1 from your hand. Additionally, the trigger is draw 2 and trash 1 as well, so which is pretty good. So this is good. If you go first, you play this on 3, and then at 5 Dawn, if you got nothing better to you just do a big 10k attack, and if they don't get rid of it, you get to card +1, right? You do have to it's a big 9k because you have to put 1 under Bonney, but this is like just a kind of good value card. If your opponent doesn't spend resources to get rid of it, you can get some resources off from it over time, and it has just a really good trigger effect. Like having like a mini Shirahoshi effect out of your life, even though you don't get to play the card, is pretty fine. So we do play the 2-drop Shirahoshi, especially since Red Purple Law isn't around right now. And then we have our top end of 2 Enels, 4 Katakuris, 4 Yamatos, and 4 of the Ace. So this looks like a pretty interesting build, one I haven't really tried before. I do think Enel does run into issues where like Lucci is just so good at removing our big bodies as soon as we play them, so we don't really get intrinsic value for it. We can get rid of their like big Gecko Moria, but we have to spend like our entire turn doing it, and we can't really do anything else afterwards. And I think that's a really big shame for this deck. So if we want to, we could do something where we could Raigo and then we could play Bonney and then get like a draw 2 trash 1, but I think that's not so likely as it is right now. So I don't know what Enel really needs. It's still really obnoxious if they're really able to set up, but I do think there's a lot of decks right now that kind of counter it. And with Dofi coming out, I think being able to play as many bodies as they can be really tough for us to really get as much like longevity as we're used to. So we'll see what happens to Enel, but this is how it is right now. But big congratulations to Jake for finishing with it in this weekend. And then we've got Zoro. So this is Richard from the North American event. Again, the Animal Kingdom Pirates, or not Animal Kingdom Pirates, the Animal Pirates from Drum Kingdom, that whole package has been still very good. We've seen this Chopper, and again, this is a card that you can devote your entire deck building to. It's very searchable. It's a good turn 2 play, and it's able to just generate a lot of value from it. So I think a lot of people have been trying it in other leaders, but Zoro's continued to just be the best generic one for it. Now, I've been seeing quite a few builds of this. Obviously, you have to play a lot of animals, so you got their Tony Choppers. We have our 2Ks as well with the super spot build Duck Troops, and then we have kind of a bit of a high end of like the Dragon. I've seen some people put Silvers in here as well, but this is generically, I think, the stronger ones that we have. Having 4 Kitten Killers as well as the Monkey.D.Luffy. So I think this deck is just it's aggressive, right? We haven't really had like a lot of aggressive decks, I think, in the last little bit. So having Zoro be relevant, I think, is interesting for this game right now. But obviously, kind of like what we mentioned when we were talking about Trafalgar Law, there's so much like good low to the ground removal that exists right now that it's hard to get the amount of value that we used to be able to get with Zoro this time last year. So I think this is going to be good. I think decks that are like 4 life can be really bullied by this deck still. If you're playing against a deck that's like 2 like late game, or it does really well against 4 life leaders, but it really is so susceptible to removal. But I think it's still very solid right here, and congratulations to Richard for their finish with Zoro. And to wrap it up, we've got Reiju. So this is Harrison's version of it. This is obviously a deck that did get a good new 2k with the Black Maria. I think the biggest thing that I've noticed noticed with this is that there were times when I used to play this deck where I was at like 6 Dawn and I'm like, wow, I want to be able to play my 8 cost Judge next turn, but I really can't because I'll go down, if I want to play out like my HG or something else, right? If I have to go Dawn minus to get my leader effect because you want to try to do that every turn to get that extra draw, you really can't do that. So Black Maria being able to let you be aggressive with your Dawn minus and then get your Dawn back to be able to play Judge the next turn, I think has been really, really helpful for this deck. And this card hasn't really been much better because of how Black Maria can help you with it. So unfortunately, the card's not super searchable, which hurts a little bit, but it also means like Tony Chopper's very good too. So for example, if we're at 6 Dawn, we can use HG's effect, be able to use it to go into our big HG, play out the Chopper for 2, and then we're back at 8 Dawn for the next turn. So I think maybe more decks need to lean to the fact that you can play this card a little bit more consistently, but it is tough to find space for it. You're seeing that we're playing 3 of the 4 since we aren't playing the Yonji, which I think is fine. It's the weakest of it, but I think that's it. And then the other thing is that we've got the Sanji 2K. This is a promo. It is a Germa Kingdom Vinsmoke family, so it's searchable, but the effect's not super great. But the fact that you get to have like more searchable cards, I think is good. The fact that we get to play Pudding in this deck is good too. And I think Reiju's still like in an okay spot. It's very hard to be consistent, I think, with this deck, but when you go off, you're one of the stronger decks in this format, and I don't think that's really going to change as much, but it's going to be hard again to get the max value for it. So, but this is a build here for Harrison. Congratulations for their finish at this event. So that's going to be it for this one. I know a little bit longer. I probably talked, I think, for like 5 minutes about Yamato, but we'll see if you guys like that or not. But if you guys made it this far, please make sure to hit that like and subscribe. Again, it really does help. You can make sure to check out all the deck lists for this event and many others on my website, Eggman Events, and I'm looking forward to future events as we get them. So that's going to be it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll catch you all next time.